In the cold, unforgiving void of space, an ominous shadow stirred. Emerging from the impenetrable darkness beyond the galaxy's edge, an extragalactic monstrosity slithered into the Milky Way, driven by an insatiable hunger for life. This was Hive Fleet Behemoth, a relentless swarm of nightmarish Tyranid creatures, and their first target was the Ultramarines' homeworld of Macragge. The distant stars twinkled like scattered diamonds in the inky blackness, their light belying the terror that now approached. The Tyranid fleet drifted silently, inexorably towards Macragge, their bioships pulsating with an eerie, unsettling life of their own. The grotesque vessels writhed and twisted, melding flesh and chitin in a horrifying union that defied the very laws of nature. They were a stark contrast to the cold, geometric designs of the Imperial Navy's ships, their organic forms a chilling harbinger of the nightmare that lay ahead. The first inkling of the approaching horror came as a shiver, a whisper, a faint disturbance in the psychic tapestry that bound the Imperium of man. Astropaths stationed on the fringes of Ultramar felt a gnawing unease, an inexplicable dread that settled into the very marrow of their bones. As the psychic ripples intensified, a grim realization dawned upon the astropaths. This was no ordinary threat. This was something altogether alien and malevolent. Word of the approaching menace spread like wildfire through the Imperium, and soon the dire news reached the hallowed halls of the Ultramarines' fortress of Hera on Macragge. The fortress, an imposing edifice of adamantine and ferrocrete, stood sentinel atop the craggy peaks of the planet's northernmost mountains, its battlements bristling with the weaponry of war. This bastion of the Emperor's finest warriors was now faced with the greatest challenge in its storied history. Chapter Master Marneus Calgar, a towering figure clad in the ancient and revered suit of tactical dreadnought armor known as the Armor of Antilochus, stood in the strategium, his piercing gaze locked on the hololithic display that hovered before him. The display showed the rapidly approaching Tyranid fleet, their grotesque bioships looming ever closer to the beleaguered world of Macragge. Calgar's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing with grim determination as he surveyed the impossible odds. The Ultramarines, the vaunted sons of Robut Guilliman, would not yield their homeworld without a fight. With a resolute voice that echoed through the strategium, he issued his commands. Prepare the defenses, summon the reserve companies, and ready the fleet. We face a foe unlike any we have ever encountered, but we are the Ultramarines, and we shall not falter. And so, the race against time began. Across the length and breadth of Macragge, the Ultramarines and their mortal auxiliaries labored tirelessly to shore up their defenses. Mighty bastions and fortresses were fortified, their walls thickened and reinforced, while gun emplacements and missile silos bristled with fresh ordnance. The skies above Macragge were filled with the roar of Thunderhawk gunships and the shriek of interceptors as the planet's defenses were brought to readiness. As the Tyranid fleet drew ever closer, the air on Macragge grew heavy with tension, every heartbeat echoing like the drums of war. The Ultramarines stood resolute, their cerulean power armor gleaming like sapphires amidst the gathering storm. Their bolters and power weapons hummed with deadly intent, ready to unleash righteous fury upon the encroaching swarm. Battle brothers exchanged grim nods, acknowledging the grim struggle that lay ahead, their oaths of brotherhood and loyalty more significant than ever. In the planet's orbit, the Imperial Navy fleet, led by the indomitable battle barge Octavius, braced for the inevitable clash against the Tyranids. The fleet was a formidable sight, a collection of cruisers, frigates, and destroyers that represented the might of the Imperium. Their captains, grizzled veterans of countless engagements, steeled themselves for the approaching storm, the weight of their responsibility as the first line of defense etched upon their faces. As the Tyranid fleet entered the Macragge system, the very atmosphere seemed to shudder with dread. The bioships, monstrous entities that were equal parts living organism and spacecraft, glided through the void like grotesque chitinous leviathans. Their bioweapons pulsed with malevolent energy, eager to unleash destruction upon the Ultramarines and their world. The first salvos of the Titanic conflict were fired as the Imperial Navy launched its opening assault, sending volleys of macro cannon fire and torpedoes screaming through the void towards the Tyranid swarm. The bioships, unfazed by the onslaught, responded in kind, unleashing searing bioplasma beams and swarms of living missiles that tore through the void with voracious intent. Amidst the maelstrom of battle, the Tyranids unleashed their most insidious weapon, the psychic choir of the Hive Mind. The synaptic network of the Tyranids, a gestalt consciousness that bound the entire swarm in a single malevolent will, now reached out to engulf the minds of the Imperial defenders. Across Macragge, astropaths and psychers recoiled in agony, their minds assaulted by the relentless cacophonous choir that sought to consume their very sanity. As the psychic assault intensified, the defenders of Macragge fought back with a fury born of desperation. Librarians of the Ultramarines, their psychic powers honed by years of discipline and training, sought to shield their brethren from the Tyranid onslaught. Their minds strained against the terrible tide, their psychic powers a bulwark against the darkness that threatened to engulf them all. And so, the stage was set for the epic conflict that would come to be known as the First Tyrannic War. The Ultramarines, led by the unyielding Marneus Calgar, stood defiant against the oncoming storm, their unwavering resolve a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. Against them, the Tyranid swarm surged forward, a monstrous, unrelenting tide that sought to consume all in its path. As the skies of Macragge darkened with the shadows of the Tyranid swarm, the First Tyrannic War began in earnest, a brutal struggle for survival that would test the mettle of the Ultramarines and their allies like never before. As the forces of the Imperium and the Tyranids clashed in a maelstrom of fire and blood, the future of Macragge, and indeed the entire galaxy, hung in the balance.